2 thumbs up. All right, so I want to welcome everybody watching remotely. We wanted to, due to demand, a lot of people in our community ask us to live stream this event. They couldn't make it. They're located outside of the RTP. They're really interested in AI and Linux. They really love Jay the Linux guy from Learn Linux TV. So they asked us to live stream this event. So we're happy that we were able to make that happen. Thanks to Nathan and his team for helping us do that. So everybody joining remotely, thank you very much for joining. So everybody here in person, it's a big crowd, it's a big space. How do you like this space? It's fantastic. I llove it. I absolutely love it. This is from an architectural standpoint and aesthetic standpoint. It's one of the prettiest, nicest places we've ever done an event in. It's a lot of character. It literally looks like the nicest barn I've ever seen. I've seen some barns, and no barn I've ever seen looks like this barn. So this is super, super nice. Also, while I'm thinking about it, I want to say hi to 2 sweet little boys that are at home. My kids are watching tonight via the live stream. So I want to say hi to Grayson and Sullivan. I love you guys very, very much. I'll see you soon. So hopefully you can see me, and I would normally blow you kisses and everything like that, but I'll hold off on that tonight. I'll just keep it at, I love you very much. I can't wait to see you. Okay, so I want to thank you all for being here. As we always say before we host an event or at any event and every event we host, a lot of other places you could be. It is a Wednesday evening, so lots of things going on around town, lots of things to do here, but you've chosen to be with us, and that means a lot to us. We never take that for granted, so thank you so much for being here. We are truly, truly grateful. I want to thank Bandwidth as well. Todd Darling is with Bandwidth. He's here. Let's give a round of applause to Bandwidth. Thank you. Thank you. Todd is not only a wonderful human being, which is most important in our book, of course, but Bandwidth has been a longtime partner, actually for a number of years now, which we very much appreciate. We've hosted multiple events here, the last of which was a workshop. Some of you may have attended the workshop. Brent Laster delivered 2, a morning segment and an afternoon segment here maybe 3 or 4 months ago, and it went over very, very well, and we've hosted multiple meetups here now as well. So thanks to Bandwidth, this venue, I'm not sure you could find a nicer venue here in the Triangle. All Things Open. How many people are here for the first time? First timers? Ooh, thank you. I love first timers. Thank you all for coming out. You may or may not know this, but we host the All Things Open conference, if you've heard of that. It just took place 3 weeks ago in downtown Raleigh. We had maybe, I don't know, 6,000, 6,500 people that registered on site any given day, Monday, Tuesday, or Sunday is about 1,000 people on site, but Monday and Tuesday we had between 2,000, 3,500 people on site. Anyway, it's one of the largest events on the U.S. East Coast, certainly one of the largest open source events. It was spectacular this year, and we're very, very grateful for that. So I know probably the majority of you here were at that event. Thank you all for attending that event. But if you've never been, we've already announced 2026 dates. So plan now to attend. You can actually find us at allthingsopen.org online, allthingsopen.org, and then you'll see that we've announced dates for 2026. So that'll be October the 18th through the 20th. So just kind of make a mental note, and then maybe after the event, or if you have your laptop or your phone here with you tonight, you can find that, and you can actually click Save the Date and add that event to your calendar. We would love to have you at that event. We also host a spring AI event. This past year, we did it for the first time in Durham. This past March, we were at the Carolina Theater. How many of you were at the AI event at the Carolina Theater in Durham this past March? Okay, very good, a good number of you. I'm not sure we could have fit another human being in the Carolina Theater. We nearly got shut down by the fire marshals. They were threatening us, and we begged them not to shut us down, and luckily they did not do that. So this year, and we're going to do it again in March of 2026, in about 6 months from now, we've actually rented, reserved, the Durham Convention Center next door. So you may or may not be aware of this, but those 2 venues are connected. So the Durham Convention Center is connected to the Carolina Theater. So we've actually reserved both of those venues for that event in March of 2026. So we hope that you'll come out for that event as well. About 1,600 people attended that event this past March. We expect maybe 2,500 or so this upcoming March. So the content is fantastic. Day 1 on Monday will be workshop day, a dedicated hands-on workshop day. And then day 2 will be a traditional conference day, very much like the ones you just experienced at ATO if you're able to go. The CFP, the call for papers or call for proposals, just opened for that event. So be on the lookout for that. We're going to be making some announcements, and the CFP will be open for 30 to 45 days or thereabouts. It'll close before the end of this year. So if you want to submit a talk, if you're interested in submitting a CFP, that is now open. Okay, so tonight we're going to do something. Jay, in addition to being a YouTuber, and one of the most well-known YouTubers on YouTube, by the way, more than 1 million subscribers, which is very impressive, given the fact that we have a YouTube channel also, and I know how hard it is to get subscribers, and the fact that you've done that, extremely impressive. But you're also an author. You also write books, and we've got 10 of your books here tonight. So we tried to think of the best way to give these things away and the fairest way to do it. We collaborated on it, and honestly, the best thing we could come up with was Jay's idea. Thank you for this. Is on the bottom of your tables, we actually put a yellow sticky note. So look under your tables, and if you see a yellow sticky note, you have won a book. And here's what we would ask you to do. And for those of you watching virtually and joining us, everybody's looking under the table, so which is actually pretty cool. Thank you. Okay, very cool. Now they're holding up their yellow Post-it notes. Very good. So if you've got one, what you can do is after the meetup, you can come up and redeem it, and Jay will sign a book and personalize it to you, which is kind of cool. I still like personalized books, and it's always really neat to meet an author. So hopefully all 10 were claimed or found. And then again, those books are right here on the end of the stage, as you can see right at my feet. And at the end of the meetup, we will, again, feel free to come up and Jay will sign those for you. So Jay, thank you again for the idea. That was extremely, the fairest way we needed, most fair way that we knew to do it. And so it looks like that went rather smoothly, all things considered. We are live streaming and recording tonight. So again, those of you joining via the live stream, we thank you very much for that. We're going to get right to content, right to Jay in just a minute. And then we are recording tonight as well. So we'll publish this talk on our YouTube channel here very soon. So if there's something you miss, don't worry about it. You'll actually be able to go back and watch the recording. If someone that you know, and I made this announcement about 20 minutes before we got started tonight, that may not have been able to make it tonight, text them and let them know that we are live streaming, and they can go to our YouTube channel and actually watch the live stream there. That's where we're live streaming it at, and I would encourage them to do that, the easiest way to watch it if they weren't able to make it tonight. So all that being said, final thing I'll touch on before we get started. Our next meetup is November the 18th. November is sort of an odd month in that we're hosting 2 meetups. And the next one, obviously this one is AI and Linux, and we thank Jay for being here. On November the 18th, we'll be at Cisco's headquarters here in the RTP on their campus, and the topic is going to be security and quantum computing. So the team from the Open SSL Foundation, they're actually traveling in to co-host that meetup with us, which is kind of cool. Not every day you have a chance to co-host an event with the Open SSL Foundation, and the CEO of their foundation is going to speak that night, deliver about a 20-minute talk on quantum computing, and then we're going to move into a panel discussion featuring security leaders that are RTP based. So there'll be a number, maybe 4 or 5 security leaders from the RTP that'll be participating in that panel discussion as well. So put November the 18th on your calendars also. Again, this is really the final thing I'll say, I promise. We host an education platform called We Love Open Source. Jason, I was going to get you to come up and say a few words about it, but yeah, sounds good. When I asked where you were outside. So anyway, but by all means, find us at allthingsopen.org. If you're interested in writing a blog post, getting quote unquote published is often a great way to get started. We would love to actually publish something from you. So if you're interested in writing a blog post or even sitting for an interview and being interviewed, by all means, go to allthingsopen.org. We Love Open Source is at the top of the page. You can actually click and it'll take you to the internal page. You'll see the types of content that we publish on a regular basis. And then there is express an interest inquiry form. So if you're interested, you can actually click on the button that says, I'd like to get started or learn more as to how to contribute. It'll take you to an internal page. You can watch a quick video and then learn how you can actually contribute and get started. So we would love to do that with you as well and love to have you contribute to the platform. Okay, with all that said, Jason, anything else that I missed? Yeah, all good? Okay, I'm getting a thumbs up. Okay, with all that being said, I'm going to introduce Jay LaCroix, otherwise known as Jay the Linux Guy. Again, more than 1 million followers on YouTube. Jay, I hope I'm not giving away too much information, recently relocated, good news, from Michigan to Myrtle Beach. So he's only about 3 hours away from the Triangle. We plan to take full advantage of that, Jay, by the way. We're gonna feature you as much as you're willing to be featured. But anyway, Jay is an author. As I mentioned, he wrote books like the 10 that are at my feet. And again, he has more than 1 million followers on YouTube. Most people here probably seen him, watched one of his videos. His videos get an incredible number of views. And again, that's so admirable in my book because I know how hard that is to cut through the noise on YouTube. So you're obviously substantive and there's something to your talks. Otherwise, that many people would not tune in. So we are thrilled to have you here tonight. You've become a good friend of All Things Open. And most importantly, as I often say, you're just a heck of a nice guy. You're a heck of a nice human being. So we appreciate that very, very much. So with all that said, let's get right to it. Come on up, and you're already mic'd up. Thank you.
All right. How's everybody doing? Awesome. And how great is this venue? I mean, this is incredible. And my fiance and I just bought a house recently, like within the last 4 weeks. And I'm setting up a new studio, and I'm looking around. I'm like, I could draw some inspiration from this. I'm really liking this. So perhaps maybe a little bit of this will bleed into the studio back home. But anyway, you're not here to hear about my studio. You're here to hear about Linux and AI. So let's talk about that. But there's a few things I just wanted to get out of the way that didn't really make it into the slides that I want you guys to keep in mind as we go through this. AI succeeds or fails depending on us, okay? How we develop it, whether or not we embrace it. As we go through the slides, you'll understand more and more of what I'm talking about, but as a little spoiler, you know, sometimes it seems like some companies are putting AI into things just to check the box, while other companies are handling AI in an intelligent way to offer value to consumers. So depending on how that goes kind of depends or determines the future, but just keep that in mind as we go on through the talk. But I'm going to talk about AI and Linux, and of course some non-Linux things, because AI is an all-encompassing thing that is pretty much everywhere. But being that my specialty is in Linux, of course, we're going to cover that as well. All right, so what are we going to talk about? Obviously AI, right? But one of the things we're going to talk about is the overall AI landscape in 2025, which is interesting because AI, it seems like it's different every day, right? There's a new model that comes out in Claude or ChatGPT, or we find AI is in a browser that it didn't have it before. So the overall landscape is changing frequently, but we're going to kind of talk about how things are right now. And later on in the talk, I'm going to give some predictions as far as where we think it's going to be going. Obviously, some of the ways in which AI is used today, I already gave away some things. I mean, it's in browsers. It's probably going to be in a kitchen sink before the end of the week. But we're going to talk about some of the ways in which AI is used today, but also how Linux fits into the picture. There's going to be some interesting stats around that we're going to get into. But we're also going to talk about how to get the most out of AI while also having reasonable expectations. Obviously, AI is great, but is it perfect? No, it's absolutely not. We're going to talk about that too, but in my experience, I think anytime I have AI generate code, it's wrong 10% of the time. So, I mean, being that it's new, 90% isn't too bad. But first, who am I? Well, Todd gave away a lot of it already, which is great. I love All Things Open, and I really appreciate him having me out here. I appreciate you guys for showing up. Thank you so much. But for those of you that are new or just saw that an AI workshop or talk is being given and you're not really sure who I was, I have over 20 years of experience in Linux. I started using Linux before it was cool. When I first started, a Linux job was hard to find on the job board. You'd see probably 10 or 15 Windows system administrator jobs and maybe one Linux job if you're lucky. Oddly enough, it flipped the other way around. Not necessarily saying there's just one Windows admin job in general. There's a lot more than that. But it's interesting how Linux became this underdog that kind of just took over servers. And it's funny because people on Reddit and on the YouTube channel complain, like, when's Linux going to take over the desktop? Well, it's taken over servers. I mean, doesn't it get credit for that? But it's definitely a lot more popular now than it ever was. So looking back at my decision to get into Linux and focus on that, I'm really glad I made that choice because it worked out well. I also have over 20 years experience in enterprise IT. I didn't necessarily start working in Linux. I started as a Windows sysadmin, and then I was using Linux since 2002, but you know, like many other people, you start in help desk, excuse me, you start in Windows admin, and then you're doing that, and then you gravitate and transition into Linux later on, and that's a story that's very common for Linux administrators today, and I'm no different. I'm the author of 6 Linux-related books, and yes, they were written in LibreOffice, so it's funny when I see people in social media say things like, LibreOffice isn't as good as Microsoft Office, and I'm thinking, really? I wrote 6 books with it. It can't be that bad. But also, of course, I'm the host of Learn Linux TV, a YouTube channel I started in my bedroom of a house I rented in Waterford, Michigan in 2012. My very first video was done with a point-and-shoot camera pointed at my television that was just beside my bed. So, of course, I had an awkward angle with a microphone I bought for like $12, recorded on a laptop that I found used at a flea market. And at the time, I just kind of thought, oh, this is video game money. Maybe if I can make $60 or $70 a month, it'll pay for a PlayStation 3 game or something. I was just doing it as a hobby. I never knew that it was actually going to become my career, but here we are. And speaking of Learn Linux TV, just a few things about that. It recently surpassed 1 million subscribers, and I didn't even know if I was going to get above 200 or above 400,000. It's one of the largest, thank you. It's one of the largest Linux learning resources, and what I like most about the channel, or what I try to do the most, is to take something that's extremely complicated and break it down into a way that people can generally understand it. I use a narrative in all of my videos, which isn't really all that noticeable. If you think of a narrative, you think of Star Wars, the lightsabers and Darth Vader. That's a really exciting narrative. Narrative in education isn't nearly as exciting, but it is important because the story you're telling is where someone is today, checking out a technology or learning rsync for the very first time, and where they want to get to by the end of the video. And the story is how you get them to the end of the mission to help them understand it. And part of the reason why is because learning was always extremely hard for me. I have 90th percentile ADHD, so I just found instruction to be very difficult, especially for me. And it was really hard for me to get a grasp on a lot of things. But when I found that I understood something, I found that I like to explain it to people the way that I would understand it, the way that I prefer someone to teach me, and that's the biggest focus of the channel. And of course, distribution reviews. I got to keep everyone up to date on what's coming out. The Fedora 43 review just came out today. Over 56 million views, so apparently people care about Linux. I'm just blown away by this because I never knew that the channel would grow to the heights that it's grown to. And since I started in 2012, a lot of people look at it, wow, he's huge, but it was a lot of work over a long number of years and messing up constantly and doing YouTube wrong. And then later in my career, finding out you're always doing YouTube wrong because that's the only way you can do it, because the algorithm in YouTube, I like to tell people, is like quantum science. If you observe it, it changes quantum state and it's different. Anyway. So I've already mentioned, I guess I have that a second time here, that it's one of the largest Linux learning resources. But it's amazing to me that it's something that is enjoyed all over the globe. There's people all over the country, India, Brazil, UK, Italy. There's too many countries for me to name that are utilizing my content. And it's just so amazing to me that people around the world are finding value in the things that I do. And I really love this job. So I'm very thankful to be in the position that I'm in, and the community basically lifting me up into that space, because when you love what you do for a living, it's not work. I feel like I'm being paid for my hobby, and there's really nothing better than that. That's living life. You gotta love what you do. You just have to, because you're doing your job like a bunch of hours a day. You may as well love it. Now, what exactly is AI? And it's one of those things that's kind of hard to define because AI tries to be everything to everyone. It's not, but it is helpful to most people. But the simplest definition I could think of, which is probably overly simplified, is artificial intelligence, or AI. It's designed to learn and then use that data to assist or produce a result. And I don't think it's going to take over the world or enslave us or anything like that, but I could have used a meme here that'd be pretty funny. But the reality is that it's a system for learning. That's what a large language model is. It's learning, what we're doing or we're harvesting the data, finding the connections, and then offering a result. And then nowadays, you can use it to generate entire lines of code or scripts and programs. It's just amazing. And it comes in many forms, as I alluded to a few times here. I mean, you have smart speakers like Alexa, which, it is AI, but anyway. Chat agents and a multitude of in-app implementations. And going back to my point about AI being one of those things, it kind of seems like some companies are just putting it in everything just for the sake of being competitive. I can imagine in some companies you have a board meeting, our competitor is doing AI, we need to do AI too, so let's do AI. And then that's why they do AI, just because their competitor's doing it. But in other cases, and I'm going to give an example later on of AI done right, like an example of a really good implementation of AI, and we're going to explore that. And it can help us with completing tasks. It helps us make sense of things, generating images, for example. I've used more than a few of them in thumbnails on the channel because I'm a Linux guy, not a graphic designer, although some people would claim that I am because I think I'm getting better at it. But, and of course, this is way simplified. There's so many things that it can do, and those are the highlights right there. But although it's helpful, AI can sometimes work against us. Now, we need to, it's reality. You see the news about jobs being eliminated, Amazon being a current example of that in the news right now. So AI is great, but there's some side effects, and also it's not always accurate. I've more than a few times had it generate some code, and I throw it into a test system, and it breaks things. Most of the time it's right, but sometimes it's not. And this is interesting to me because in enterprise IT, if something isn't 10 years old, it's beta, okay? That's the way that our mindset is. If something reaches that 10-year mark, then it's solid. But of course, AI has been around in various forms for a very long time. But what we call AI today isn't 10 years old. It's relatively new, but we're putting it in everything. But as long as we keep reasonable expectations, we understand it's not always accurate. But also, it isn't exactly what we thought it would be like as kids. I mean, can you think of a picture, especially for those of you that are a sci-fi fan, when you see like in Star Trek or any of these other shows, they're talking about AI, and then you're like, man, when I'm growing up later, wouldn't that be great? Yeah, I kind of thought it would be different too. That's kind of the first image that I came up with right there. But honestly, I had to throw a Jetsons reference in there with a robot that cleans the house, Rosie, obviously. I've named more than a few AI agents Rosie at this point. But AI is very different today than we probably thought it would be when we're seeing it in sci-fi. But, it is what it is. Anyway. Now, how many of you have used AI? Yep, pretty much most. How many of you have used AI today? Pretty much the same hands, right? That's pretty cool. Well, let's talk about AI popularity a little bit. I dug up some facts that I thought were pretty interesting. A report by Menlo Ventures estimates that globally 1.7 to 1.8 billion people have used AI tools. That's incredible. That's a lot of people. And around 500 to 600 million people engage with these tools daily. And yes, I'm one of those people. I use AI for various things. On the YouTube channel, I use it pretty heavily, not for what you think, though. It's when you're dealing with social media and you're dealing with marketing, I'm not a marketing person. I'm not going to be so great at coming up with hashtags, for example, so I'll have it generate hashtags and things like that. So probably not something you guys would have noticed, but I also use it in my automation system, not to write the code, but sometimes just to give me ideas, or sometimes it'll be just something weird that I'm trying to do, and I'll have AI unpack it. We'll get into that. But according to AI Index report, Sanford, 78% of organizations reported using AI in 2024, up from 55% the year before. So there's no question that this is growing. It's growing quite quickly, as a matter of fact. And in the United States, usage of AI in the workplace has nearly doubled in 2 years. So there you go. Again, it's popular. But another thing I want to talk about is that Linux is the key ingredient. No, that does not mean you have to run Linux to use AI. I mean, we all know that regardless of what your operating system happens to be, you can use AI on that operating system, and even if you can't, you can still use it in the browser. But how does Linux fit into the picture? Well, there's a bunch of different ways, so I had to summarize it a little bit here. But the majority of AI is Linux-driven, as much as 71%. The number fluctuates a little bit. It's not quite 71%. It's like 71.8 or 71.9% or something like that. Linux is a very flexible platform, and it's something that I've always loved about it. You could pretty much throw Linux on everything. And when my career started, I kind of remember a Windows system, trying to use Clonezilla and clone it from system A to system B, and then getting a blue screen of death because I copied a Windows installation to another computer, do the same thing on Linux, and it works just fine. Nowadays, I know how to get away with doing that on Windows, as I'm sure many of you in the audience are Windows system administrators and know exactly how to do that. But one of the things I've noticed is that Linux is very scalable and flexible. Early in my career, I noticed that LVM, Logical Volume Manager, very early on, it was just like magic to me that you could resize a file system while it's running. I mean, that's incredible. Nowadays, that doesn't really matter so much because there's a number of file systems that do that, and it's not quite as exciting as it used to be. But the majority of AI is Linux-driven. And many edge deployments rely on Linux, whether that's implementations and IoT devices, smart home devices, smart speakers, all kinds of different things, rely on Linux either directly or indirectly. So again, that doesn't mean you have to install Linux on a computer to use AI, obviously, but AI usually has come from Linux in some form or fashion. And many AI-related career roles assume Linux competency. So Linux is one of those things that even if your job that you're trying to get or already have is very AI-centric, chances are they're going to expect that you at least know a little bit about Linux. So I think that's kind of telling that Linux fits into the picture and has a big prominent place there. But one of my favorite things about this, and this isn't necessarily, it's directly related to Linux, but it's not. Administrators in general can benefit from this, but sometimes just unpacking things and making sense of things is something that AI could really help us with. And when we deal with Linux, sometimes well, actually not sometimes, a lot of times it's hard. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I started the YouTube channel, because it's kind of hard to learn. I mean, even when you think you're getting a handle on it, something else comes out. I'm learning QEMU 1 minute, and then, oh, now here comes Kubernetes, and I got to learn that. There's always something new to learn, and keeping up with it is kind of hard. And sometimes it's when you're working on a project, for example, a client asks you to build a cloud environment for them, and maybe you're excited like I would be. Oh, yeah, that sounds like a fun project, but where do I begin? What do I do? How do I connect the systems? Software-defined networking, how should I subnet everything? And then which distribution should I use? How should I tune the kernel? And all these different things. Sometimes AI often can be very helpful in helping us unpack the project in general. It's one thing to have it generate code for us that may or may not compile, but what AI usually does a good job of, at least in my opinion, is just telling it, I have this project, this is my goal, these are the requirements, this is what needs to happen, what are some options here. And even if you don't want to go along with what AI tells you, because obviously every administrator is creative, that has his or her own opinion on how things should be developed, but it can start getting the brain going, and it can start to remove a little bit of anxiety too, because sometimes when you have a really big project, you're like, well, I have all these different things that I have to develop. What order should I develop them in? Things like that. And then sometimes AI, even if you don't go exactly according to its plan, it's still going to give you an idea of some of the things that you might expect. And Linux, like I mentioned more than a few times, is somewhat difficult to learn. Again, there's a lot to unpack, but AI can break down difficult subjects. I mean, if anyone has looked at the manual page for rsync, you know what I'm talking about. It's ginormous. Like, how many options does a single command actually need? I mean, you could keep scrolling the rsync page for like 4 or 5 minutes before you actually get to the end of it. And there's no way that anyone is going to learn everything. I get asked a lot from a lot of people, how do you memorize all these commands? I don't, neither does anyone else. We memorize the commands that we use every day. We memorize the options that we use every day, but it's just not possible to memorize everything. And if you did manage to do that, that means your family hasn't seen or heard from you in a very, very long time. But sometimes it's just helpful to have AI break it down for you. Like, okay, I want to copy files from server A to server B using rsync. This is my network connection speed, the type of cable that I have. What are the options that I should use here? And maybe it'll give you the options that you need. And often looking things up in AI is faster than scrolling through a man page. So even if you don't want to use AI all that much, even if you just use it for that one thing, it's definitely beneficial. But we also need to have reasonable expectations. I've already mentioned a few times now that AI is not perfect. It actually hallucinates. So let's talk about some reasonable expectations. Like I mentioned before, it's a new technology. And from an enterprise perspective, like I said, I mean, if it's not 10 years old, then we don't trust it. But AI is basically here, and we can benefit from it. But sometimes it can hallucinate, providing code that doesn't compile or making false claims. So that's why we have to fact check it. And obviously, don't rush AI-generated code into production, okay? You're just asking for trouble. Sure, it might work well, but there's a reason why we have test environments, specifically isolated test environments on an isolated network that cannot reach production, because we can throw whatever code we want at it, and if we break it, it's fine. It's a test environment. We can, re-provision the environment, no problem. But definitely don't rush AI-generated code into production. Just make sure that it does exactly what you think it does before you actually implement it. One time I had it basically look at one of my scripts, my provisioner script for my automation system. I just kind of wanted to see, what it would do. And I think I have, I could probably guess, let's say 500 or 600 lines of code in this bash script. And I just feed it into AI. I'm like, can you simplify this for me? And it did. It got it down to 200 lines of code. Most of the features still worked, but not all of them. And I lost the ability to pass command line arguments to my script at that point. So it got the basic gist of what I was doing, but it didn't quite follow what I was trying to do completely. So again, test it first. I like to think of AI as a tool that leads to a solution rather than being a solution itself. As we're going to talk about later, as AI gets better, we could rely on it more, especially agentic AI and things like that, being more I don't want to say self-aware because that would scare people, but basically more self-sufficient is where it's going. But again, just if you use AI as a starting point, I find out that today it works really well that way. Whether you want to unpack a command and the options that you should use, you got this really big project you need to work on and you're not really sure where to begin or how to break it down. Things like that, generally speaking, it does a fantastic job. Gotta stay hydrated. Anyway. Let's talk a little bit more about how AI benefits system administration. And of course, this is where I have a lot of special interest. Like I mentioned a few times, there's a lot to keep track of, and it's amazing to me the types of things that we learn the hard way. I worked with an administrator who had an amazing backup system in AWS. I mean, it just backed up everything it saw, well, almost everything. What he didn't actually notice is that in an LVM configuration where you have multiple disks, it wasn't getting every disk. It got the first one, but it didn't get the other one. So obviously, restoring a system from that kind of a backup isn't really possible. And I could go on and on and on and on. There's so many different things that we need to keep track of and troubleshoot. And then we're going to have an example of this later on, but we could use it to analyze our systems and provide recommendations. Now, one of the things that is probably the most stressful about being an administrator is when you have people breathing down your neck because something's down. And when things are down, it costs money. The CTO wants to know when it's going to be back up, but you can't predict how long it's going to take you to figure out the problem, can you? So it's this Kobayashi Maru of a question that nobody could really answer, and Star Trek fans will know exactly what I just meant by that. But it can analyze our systems often faster than we can. It can make connections. And I think sometimes that's what's important, because when you have a system that's down, maybe a network server or a storage server is down, which is causing another server to go down because it relies on storage from that server. Maybe you have a DNS server that's actually not responding because it's, DNS records, its cache is on a drive that's now offline. So now a NAS server is causing a DNS server to go down, all kinds of weird things. And obviously, we're competent. We can figure this stuff out, but I think one of the values here is that it can analyze our systems often faster than we can. It doesn't mean that it's going to be right. It doesn't mean that the problem that it finds is going to be the problem that you need to fix. But at the very least, it could give you an idea where you stand when you're dealing with the problem. So we talked about this. It could work on complex tasks. AI could break them down. So if you have a situation where you need to fix something and you have to touch 10 different systems, sometimes it's good just to kind of say, hey, these are my systems. What order do I need to fix these in? Or how might things be related when seemingly unrelated problems end up being related and then ends up being DNS, because of course that's what it is. But like I mentioned before, and I guess I kind of give some things away ahead of time in my talks, but the thing is, it's often faster to ask AI than it is to check a manual page manually, for lack of a better word. But so when I mentioned before about AI done right, I'm going to talk about NetData. And I want to be clear, NetData has sponsored my YouTube channel several times in the past. They did not sponsor this talk. They had no input on this talk. They probably don't even know that this talk is happening. When companies sponsor my channel, I make sure that it's something that I actually like, something that I actually find value in, and something that I actually use. You wouldn't believe the things that come into my inbox. I mean, if I answered yes to everything, I'd be trying to sell you a robot vacuum, a mattress, makeup, underwear. I mean, you name it. There's all kinds of different things. But the fact is, if I really like something, then of course I'll let them sponsor me. And NetData is an example of AI done right. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. And I've done a video about this in case you guys are curious more about it. But one of the things that I like about NetData's implementation of AI is that it doesn't force it on you. Okay, I mean, it gets tiring when you open up your browser and then the AI button is glowing because it really wants your attention, just really wants you to click on that button. You're just trying to get your work done, not be interrupted. And other things too will interrupt you, but NetData does have a button. It doesn't glow or flash or anything like that. But you wouldn't even know that NetData has AI features unless you went looking for it. And that's how I like it. And when we go back to what I said earlier about AI succeeding or failing, depending on us, a lot of times it depends on the developers. If they're trying to cram it down our throats, we're just going to get tired of it after a while and it's going to crash. We're going to take it for granted because AI, all the things, gee, thanks, but what does this mean to me and how does this benefit my life? And I think that's really important for people to keep in mind. When you use AI within NetData, the features are largely hidden, but they're there when you need them. It's like this little icon that's really tiny. I swear you'd miss it. And next to pretty much any, and I wish I had screenshots, sorry about that in advance, but when you have a metric, for example, a CPU metric or an error message, and this is a really good example. You're going through the logs, which NetData can get the logs from your servers, and you click on the AI button next to a log entry. It'll find correlating events from other servers to give you a bigger picture of what exactly is happening. Is this error message something internal to this server? Or is it being caused by something else that the server's trying to reach that is now down? It's become very, very good, very beneficial for me. Even recently, it alerted me that I may or may not have a defective RAM module on my TrueNAS server, which I better get to fixing anyway. So it helps you it does a great job making sense of logs and metrics. But one of my favorite things about it is that if relevant, it'll give you the command that you need to enter to fix the problem. It'll literally give you the command you need right then and there. Now, obviously, again, trust, but verify, you should throw that command in the test environment, because I don't want anybody's file systems to get wiped out just because they overly trust AI. But you look at this command and you get a general idea of the options that you want to do. And of course, you could just open up a terminal and run the man command against something and look at each one of the options that AI wants you to use just to make sure that it does exactly what you want it to do. But I think it's just a really cool thing that it's able to correlate things from different systems and also give you commands to fix it, which was pretty incredible for me. Now let's talk a little bit about how AI helps us with completing tedious tasks. And the fact is, as system administrators, personally, I think the job is fun, and I still consider myself a system administrator because at my company, I'm basically everything, including the system administrator, but I have a lot of fun with it. I like going on systems and fixing things. I love puzzles and figuring things out, but sometimes things just aren't that fun. I already gave you guys an example that I'm sure many of you know too well, where you have the CTO wanting to know when the systems are going to be back up, and that heart-pounding rush of anxiety that you feel trying to obviously figure out the problem. But if your boss asks you, oh, I've just bought a brand new server, could you set it up for me? Yes, I absolutely will do that. You get that rush of dopamine, you feel pretty good, it's gonna be a fun project. But if your boss asks you to prepare a report of system usage over the past week, that's a little tedious, okay? I mean, I'm sure there's some people that love numbers and would have no problem with that and think that's a lot of fun, but for a lot of us, get asked things like that, it's like, oh gosh, I'd rather be building a server than having to deal with all the numbers and spreadsheets, or someone asks you to fix an Access database for those few companies that still have one. But with AI, we can kind of offload some of those tasks. And I think one of the best things about that is the creativity aspect, because I do feel that when we're asked to do something tedious or annoying, overall, our creativity kind of goes down. When creativity is used in system administration, we can find clever ways to solve something, clever ways to build something. If you're an Ansible fan like me, you could find a clever automation, you feel really good about that. But the minute you have to work on the more mundane things, that takes you away from the fun. And I think overall, the company systems aren't going to run as well because, again, creativity is dopamine and tedium is totally not. And I use this example too. AI can help us with DevOps by providing Ansible snippets, Chef or Puppet if that's more your thing, and generating scripts. And sometimes it's not just about using the code that AI gives you. And here I am talking about creativity, and it almost sounds like I'm saying, well, just have AI to be the creative force. No, not necessarily. Sometimes when I ask AI to do something in Ansible, I almost never do it the way AI tells me to. I've been using Ansible since like 2016. I'm very particular about this. And one time, and I did a video about this, I wanted to remove every LibreOffice package from a Fedora system. And AI came back with package removal command for every single possible LibreOffice package, one after another. And I just solved it by setting the package name to LibreOffice star, and I was done. But sometimes it's just about asking AI just to give you an idea, and sometimes you might like the way AI is doing something. Most of the time I don't. I just like to do it my way, or it's not using the right number of spaces for tabs or something like that. But sometimes just seeing how it breaks down the problem is really a good way to get started. At least it gets your brain cylinders fired up. And like I mentioned before, again, here I am giving things away ahead of time. But I say this many times because when you have a difficult project, sometimes I see administrators, especially those starting out, that don't succeed because they're worried, they're anxious. What if I do a bad job? What if I can't figure this out? What if I don't know how to connect these systems together? Sometimes just having AI break down things into smaller tasks, that really helps. With my ADHD, personally speaking, and anyone in the audience that has ADHD, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You get this project, and it's like you're a deer caught in headlights, like, oh my God, how do I work on this? And then what I've taught myself over the years is if you break it down into smaller tasks, it seems a lot more approachable. this huge project is going to take me a month, but if I break it down into 15 tasks, I think I could do these 2 things by the end of the week. And then it just seems more approachable because you're checking things off little by little, and you're seeing that progress towards your goal rather than just one big project. And sometimes with AI, it just helps with breaking that down, just so you can get a better idea of how you could do that. Or you could be like me and just have broken it down so many times on your own that it just becomes second nature. Now, speaking of mundane, I'm sure some people get excited about kernel patching, but it's not really that exciting, believe me. It's really, really not, okay? So backporting kernel patches is an example of a tedious task. And I think some distributions really create their own work in this regard. For example, I used to call Ubuntu's kernel the Franken kernel because they would just use an older version of the kernel, but then they backport fixes for bugs from a newer kernel version, or they're not using an LTS kernel. They want to use a short-term supported kernel, but then support it long-term by just backporting packages. And that's their decision as a project. Obviously, they would probably have their reasons for deciding to do it that way. But it's a huge burden, an absolutely huge burden. And as many as 10,000 new patches have landed in the mainline kernel over a 10-week period. That's crazy, okay? That's a lot of tedious things being done. And no offense to any of you in the audience if you do enjoy kernel patching. Sorry, no judgment. Stable and long-term support, kernel maintainers usually review around 100 patches per day, every day, including weekends and holidays. So, and this is where we got to be careful because I don't want to see anyone's job eliminated, personally. I mean, AI is great, but I think people are greater, right? We have families, we have our dreams and our aspirations. Nobody wants to get that pink slip. That's just sad. But at the same time, when it's, you're dealing with 100 patches per day and you're losing weekends, well, your family is probably not very happy with you in that case. It's probably time to get some assistance, and if AI can help us with some of that work, that's even better. And maybe that'll give you your weekends back, if nothing else. So I guess I'm pro-weekend and not pro-losing your job in particular. At the Open Source Summit, Sasha Levin talked about AutoCell, an AI tool written in Rust that uses large language models to help triage patches. And a lot of the work with patches is just finding out, especially when it comes to bug reports, if that's what the patch is in response to, like how many people reported the same problem. And a lot of times people obviously aren't going to use the same words when they submit a bug report. My screen's not working. Then someone else says, well, my screen times out in every 5 minutes, or someone else says it's flickering, but it's the same problem, right? It's taking a developer time to kind of figure out and link that these 3 people are talking about the same bug. And people are submitting bug after bug after bug. But this individual wrote a Rust tool that helps triage patches. And it's a really interesting article to check out. It's doing the first round, to be clear. It's doing the first round of triage. It's not actually going beyond that. But that first round of triage is very valuable because that's really helping narrow things down and lowering the number of things that you have to address, which means one person in that role is not as stressed out as they would be otherwise. And he created this tool in just 20 minutes, okay? Talk about an overachiever, oh my gosh. But I'm proud because I love to see things like this in the community. So, and this is a situation where he had someone who saw a problem, they used AI to solve it, not in a way that, eliminated his job, it's just doing the first round of triaging and things like that. So, that's pretty cool. And AI can help us learn, obviously. Nice little AI graphic there. There's a lot to learn, and not everyone has an easy time making sense of things. I already mentioned earlier with my ADHD, learning was really hard for me. And it's funny, people look at my YouTube videos, they probably never would have thought that. You're not seeing all the other things that are edited out, or all the things or all the years I had to do to learn it, all the F-bombs I say anytime something doesn't work and I have to re-record an entire section again, I just edit that out. So it probably looks like, oh yeah, he knows everything. No one knows everything. But one of the things too is that documentation itself can be overwhelming. And let's not forget, that sometimes documentation is lacking because developers aren't always writers, right? They're really good at code. Maybe they're good at writing, maybe they're not, or maybe they're hoping that someone steps up and helps them out with documentation, but nobody volunteers to do it. So obviously documentation itself can be overwhelming, and with everyone having a different learning style, that's also kind of hard, especially when you have a teacher that's teaching a classroom. And this is a big pet peeve of mine, when the teacher expects everyone to follow, right? Not everyone in that room learns the same way. So there's always going to be someone left behind. There's always going to be someone that doesn't understand. There's always going to be someone that raises their hand and isn't noticed, and then their question doesn't get answered. With AI, especially even those of you in college, you can always ask AI for clarity or ask AI to point you to some articles that'll help you understand something, that'll help you find that information quicker. So if your teacher didn't get to your question, then maybe AI will point you to an answer as well. I mean, obviously, I'm going to skip this one because I mentioned that more than a few times now. But we should talk about using AI responsibly, and I think this is something that not a lot of people really understand. I think part of this is that sometimes AI feels like a Christmas present. Ooh, new language model, I get to do new things now. I'm going to just have it do the things. But we got to kind of slow down and think about it a bit. So let's explore that. Unless you host your own AI solution, which I'm sure a number of you in the audience do, all the information you send to an AI engine or agent ends up in the cloud. I want you to think about that for a minute. I'm sure, nobody in this audience, but I'm sure somebody out there has pasted API keys into ChatGPT, right? And for those of you that are starting out, the API key is kind of like the master key that gets you into everything. I mean, Red Hat recently had something happen that I won't get into. But also think about your company. If you work for a company, if your company produces a product that no one else does, and then you start putting schematics or blueprints into AI, sure, I'd like to say that everything is safe and everyone on the other end of that AI agent is doing his or her best to keep that data safe. But what I also know, especially from a security standpoint, is there's no such thing as a non-hackable system. Actually, there is. There is a such thing as a non-hackable system. If you want a system where you cannot hack, that cannot be hacked, the mentality you have to adopt is do not use a computer, do not turn one on, and don't own one. You're unhackable at that point. But if you fail any one of those three things and you're a computer user at all, the only thing that separates a threat actor, their ability to get into your system, is just how persistent they are. So, it seems like every week a company is breached or has a problem. And Nintendo recently had a leak. Okay, like it happens to everyone. You'd think Nintendo would have a lot of security, and maybe they do. Maybe it's just the way it is. Again, persistence is how it is. But if you're willingly putting company secrets into AI, that actually scares me. And sometimes you could just, put an API key that's fake. Just use a password generator. There's my API key. What if you have to put one in a field in code? Just don't use a real one. Personally identifiable information, and then immediately I think of HIPAA, for example. For those of you that work in the medical industry, you know what I'm talking about. If anybody in a medical-related company, unintentionally or accidentally, or they just don't know any better, starts putting information about patients in there. Oh, Bob has this blood type and needs this. What do I do? Maybe I'm thinking about medical stuff because I watched The Pit last night. But anyway, that's a different story. But basically, when you're entering information into AI, we do have to be mindful that the things we're entering is legal and isn't going to get the company in trouble, or isn't going to expose secrets or trade secrets to other companies that would then come back at us. So we just got to keep that in mind. And again, it's a point so nice, I have to bring it up thrice. Don't run code AI directly in production environments, okay? I'm going to probably say it about 4 more times before this entire presentation is over. Basically, just use your best judgment. Don't be in such a hurry, right? Just you want to use AI for something, you want to paste something in there, just stop and think for a minute. Should I? Or should I maybe sanitize it a little bit? If you're pasting a log entry into AI, check it first to make sure that there's nothing in there that shouldn't be, or some information about the company. Just use your best judgment. But AI can also be amusing. So we're going to take a little break from the serious stuff, and we're going to kind of start to look at wasting time. Because, if life is too serious all the time, it's just boring. So if you want some fun things to try, here's a few examples of how you can waste time with AI. So basically, consider asking AI for something completely ridiculous. And at the end of a workday, I probably spend about 10 minutes doing stuff like this all the time because it's just great. For example, consider asking AI to generate a Hello World script using as many lines of code as possible. It's hilarious. I think I got it up to a bash script up to 64 lines of code just to print Hello World. Okay, obviously you're never going to use anything like that in production, but it does kind of show you some weird bash things that you probably wouldn't have thought of before. So it's just a good idea to waste time, or a good way to waste time. But my favorite, obviously, is, like I mentioned a few times, you can have AI explain things to you, like explain the rsync command, what is systemd, explain, or what is Wayland and why are people talking about it. These are things we can ask AI to explain, but it's a lot more fun if you ask AI to explain it as if it was a fictional character. For example, the kill command being explained by Wednesday Addams. And this is a quote right here that I actually got from AI last night because I wanted something funny. So as she says here, the kill command, everything stops eventually. The kill command just helps it happen sooner. Thought that was a pretty funny one. Or sudo explained by Spock. This command allows a mere user to act as a supreme administrator, or as humans say, the one person who can really mess things up. And have some fun with this. Another one of my favorites is the ls command explained by Regina George from Mean Girls. It's great. But as funny as that might have been, AI isn't always a good thing. We do have to get address the elephant in the room here, right? There's definitely some downsides. A few of which I alluded to. But one of the things, I guess this point here isn't really specific to AI. You could probably use this point about more than a few things. If AI is a hammer, then not every task is a nail. And I've seen this all throughout my career. Someone learns Python, they have to do everything in Python, even when it might be simpler in Bash. Or someone learns AWS, so they have to go move all the things into AWS, and then they wonder why their storage bill is $20,000 a month all of a sudden because they didn't know that storage is more expensive in the cloud. In this mentality, it's one of the mentalities that I think separates like an entry-level person from a advanced administrator. As you go through your career, you realize there's always a right tool for the job. It might not be Python every time. It may or may not be Rust. Depending on the situation you're dealing with, maybe you want to throw it in a container. I worked with a company that had a rule that everything needed to be containerized to the point where they were literally changing the URLs that an Nginx was calling in real time because the actual application, I wish I could remember which one it was, did not support running in containers. So they spent months to force one application to run in a container. But getting back to AI, just because it's here doesn't mean we have to use it. It's a tool just like anything else. It makes sense to use it when it makes sense to use it. But every now and then, maybe it doesn't. Just got to use your best judgment on that too. And AI is in everything nowadays to a fault. It's funny because, Firefox, I haven't had a chance to check it out yet, but I'm pretty sure they have an AI agent in there now, which is kind of surprising coming from Mozilla, but it is what it is. There's AI browsers now, which I guess, being old school, I really don't understand that. But, if it's something that you enjoy using, that's totally fine. But I think the biggest problem with this is that this can create AI fatigue. Okay, if developers everywhere are putting AI in things just for the sake of having AI in things, it's going to cause AI to crash, and then it's going to just obviously, I'm not saying it's going to die off, obviously, but if we basically shove it down everyone's throat, they're just going to get tired of it. We got to be intelligent with it. Use it when it makes sense to use it. Include it in our application if it offers true value to the consumer, and true value to the consumer is not keeping up with the company next door. Does it actually benefit your customers? In that case, absolutely implement it. I already gave the example of NetData. They do a fantastic job, and it's probably my favorite example of AI done right in a product nowadays. But sometimes it's in everything to a fault. We just got to keep mindful of that. And obviously, if you're a system administrator, not a developer, it's like, yeah, I agree, but what can I do about it? The developers never listen to me anyway. But anyway. But another thing, too, is that if you're not careful, you can overly rely on it. And I use the example many times of bringing up information and looking up information, and that it's faster to find information than looking through a man page. But what if you don't have access to your AI agent and your customer wants something fixed? And if you're especially entry level coming up nowadays, I would think that you're going to be using AI a lot more. If you overly rely on it, that could be a problem. And one of the ways that you could work around this is that if AI gives you some kind of result that's good, save it in a text file. Right? Like it says, these are my favorite rsync options. I'm going to have an rsync file, and I'm going to have these written down here. So anytime I need it, I can get back to it. This is the command that I've used to copy information from servers last week, so I'm going to save that. And then at some point, you kind of build your own knowledge base. And as an aside, if you haven't learned version control yet, and you haven't learned Git, creating notes is the best way to do it. You don't have to be a software engineer to use Git. Git is great for many things, and I cover this in my videos, but even if you have a repository that is just notes, things you've learned, this is what I learned today, commit that into a repository, and then you learn version control naturally at the same time that you're taking notes, and then when you don't have your AI agent available because, DNS probably, then you don't have to worry about it because, you have your notes, and chances are you probably have something in there. And this goes back to what I said earlier, that no one really remembers everything. We're human, right? We remember the things we use a lot. When it comes to LVM, Logical Volume Manager, I don't have those commands memorized, believe it or not, because I'm not resizing a volume or growing a file system every day. I'm lucky to do that twice a year. Usually, I notice if a system space is starting to run out, I add a new volume and I extend it. I just look at my notes. There's the command. But again, that's just a good way to keep notes, but then also it helps build a database or a knowledge base that you can use to where AI is benefiting you, but you're not crippled if you don't have access to it. Now, and this is really the hardest thing to talk about of any point in this entire presentation, that some job roles are being replaced by AI, okay? And people will ask, what do I do about that? How do I protect myself from being phased out by AI? And there really isn't an easy answer to that, because obviously somebody might say, well, have a plan B career. Oh, gee, thanks. I'll just set up my plan B career tomorrow. No problem. That's fine. It doesn't, that's just not realistic, right? A lot of people, and it doesn't even have to be a technical role, right? It could be any role. And you've built your skills in this role for years, and it's not like you could just create a new job role for yourself the next day. You should always keep your skills sharp and remember that AI needs to be run by a human. Okay, obviously that's going to be important, but you got to keep your skills sharp. And one example I give people is to talk to a career counselor. Okay, because everyone in this room has different skills, right? So if you have a career counselor or someone that could say, okay, let me see your resume, and it's not like you're looking for a job or anything, but you're just asking for guidance, maybe some of the skills that you have map to another career that won't take a long time to get. Maybe there's so much overlap between your current job role and another one that you really don't have to spend that much time to learn it. And obviously, I hope that this doesn't happen to anybody. But I do feel that you do have to kind of keep your eye on this a little bit, because again, there's really no easy answer to this. It's just something to keep in mind. It's happening to people. Amazon, for example, it happened recently. There's another company in the news in the past week. I just recently moved, so I don't remember who it was. But just keep your skills sharp. Talk to a career counselor. Talk to your peers. Just have that dialogue going. And one thing that I did that I think works really well before I went on my own, before I had this business, when I was just, not just, but when I was working for a company, I had a feeling that something wasn't right. Okay, I was like, something's off, the bosses aren't acting right. And it wasn't toward me, they were like this to everyone. So I literally went to a recruiter, and I said, I'm not looking for a job. I'm gainfully employed, I get paid enough, I have great health insurance, I'm not trying to leave my company right now, I actually like what I do. But I wanted to have a conversation with you and give you my resume and talk to you about my skill set, because I just want to maybe have that dialogue, but also I think there's just something's not quite right here. 3 weeks later, they announced that the company's shutting down. And by then, I already had an interview. I was already on my second interview by that 3rd week, and I had a new job the following Monday after they closed down. Okay, so this is kind of one of the things that you could do is kind of have that dialogue, talk to recruiters, talk to a career counselor. And sometimes the best time to do that is when you're not looking for a job. Because when you're looking for a job, you're frantic. Oh my God, what am I going to do? I have bills. But if you have these conversations with a recruiter, you get your name out there and you get that dialogue going, everything's a lot easier if something bad happens later down the road. But again, I hope that doesn't happen to any of you but this is the hardest thing to talk about, but it is part of our role today. So we do got to kind of try to prepare ourselves for the world that we live in. Hydrate again. Now, let's talk about the future of AI. And this conversation is hard for a different reason, right? Because when in the IT industry, I don't feel personally that analysts predict well. I remember in 2010, every IT analyst in the world was saying the laptop is dead, netbooks are here, everyone's going to have a netbook, no one's going to buy a desktop, no one's going to buy a laptop, it's all netbooks, all the things. And how many people here have one? Just curious. 1, 2, yeah, IT analysts, right? No judgment to IT analysts, because I'm sure a lot of them do a good job, but it's just that AI, it's hard to predict, and IT in general is just hard to predict because, we would think that MySpace would still be a thing because IT analysts said that MySpace would be here and that Facebook would never catch on, and then Facebook just mopped the floor with MySpace and is completely gone. So these predictions, obviously, I'm not going to give you a huge percentage of how correct they're going to be, but I think there's some obvious conclusions we could draw from this. It's saying that AI will become more agentic, which means it requires less human interaction. I guess the easiest way to explain that is, okay, I want this report run, every week, and I guess it kind of already does that, but basically it's AI doing the thing without you having to kick it off, and it's drawing conclusions from images and things, and having, a bigger brain, for lack of a better word. But I think that's probably obvious because, AI capabilities are increasing, and we see that pretty much every time we open up ChatGPT or Claude AI and see the feature list that they've added new features. But also expect more scrutiny. And this is going to be the other thing that can make or break AI, because privacy concerns are real. And the thing is, you could have text generated. I want to write a paragraph about this flower that I see out of my window. I don't know why I use that example. And then that's really great, and you get something, but then you find out it's like too similar to something else, or someone's using it to write a song, and you tell AI it needs to be original, don't use something from Taylor Swift, and all of a sudden Taylor Swift is mad at you. But obviously that's funny, but privacy concerns are real, and going back to the legal thing, it's only a matter of time, if it hasn't already happened, that we see a medical company that's in trouble with the law because patient records are floating around the internet because someone, entered them into AI. Privacy concerns are real, and in this case, we could have governments involved in this. We have the GDPR overseas, that is obviously a concern, and it's too easy to trip copyright when you don't even know that you are. So just expect more scrutiny and expect more news stories to kind of highlight this, especially recently, and I don't know why this is creepy to me. I don't know how many people have seen this story. I can't remember the actress's name. She's not real. She doesn't exist. But someone created this AI actress and then wants to sell her likeness or whatever to star in roles and things like that. And of course, Hollywood is getting upset. Like, you're trying to replace real actors. And of course, that's already triggering scrutiny. Just expect more of that. But that's just the world we live in, so nothing we could do much about it. But one of the biggest things is the cybersecurity war. The thing is, threat actors are always looking for clever ways to break into our systems. And it's not just about 0 days or the things that we don't know yet, that haven't been patched yet. But as things go on further, the cybersecurity war is going to be fought with AI on both sides. And a lot of times it already is. We're talking about triaging bugs. Security reports are being triaged this way. CVEs, for example, vulnerabilities, common vulnerabilities and exposures. The Linux kernel is using this. I mean, there's all kinds of different things. But when it comes to security, if a threat actor is wanting to break into a system, they're not going to say, you know, I could use AI and break into that system faster, but I have an honor code I need to stick to, and I'm just not going to go there. No, okay? If there's a way in, they're going to use it. And when it comes to the cybersecurity people and ethical hackers that are fighting this and trying to find these things, they're going to be spread a lot thinner as the threat actors are ramping up their attacks with AI. Then obviously the only thing that can really keep up with them is, of course, AI, looking for similarities in things to map out. So we already kind of see this, but I do feel like it's going to be going on and getting bigger, where we have, you know, it sounds cool to call it a cybersecurity war, but it's really no different than the cybersecurity war that was fought before AI. When there's a new tool, it'll be used on both sides. But I don't think that AI is going to enslave us. Keep in mind, we could pull the power cord, okay? It's funny to me, like, AI is going to take over mankind. Gee, well, I guess we'd be saved if the power grid went down then. But sometimes people over-sensationalize everything, and they think that it's going to be the end of things. It's not that bad. It's not bad at all. If I had to predict what I think AI, the ultimate form of AI is, which is not for the tech people, not for the system administrators, the IT professionals, but if we think about the general user, someone who checks Facebook, and they don't even like computers, right? They just post on Facebook, or they just share pictures with their friends. I think AI, generally speaking, is the beginning of the end of the keyboard and mouse. They'll be dictating to the screen. It'll be transcribing what they're saying. They'll be, upload a picture of my grandchild to Sue down the street, and then AI goes through Facebook and does that, those types of things. Obviously, for tech people, we're not, I mean, come on, we're not going to be totally all about that, and I don't think the keyboard and mouse are going to die for everyone. But I think when it comes to the general user, the person that doesn't care about computers, that's kind of what it is. And of course, I'm thinking, and again, another Star Trek reference, in Star Trek 4, where Scotty goes back in time and he sees this DOS computer with this mouse, and he's trying to talk to the computer, computer, and it doesn't respond. And he picks up the mouse and starts talking to it, that kind of thing. And maybe in his future, AI did get to that point, and we all know it did if you saw Star Trek. Oh, computer, turn up the temperature, things like that. So again, those are just some of the predictions, but keep in mind, a lot of IT cannot be predicted, because for all we know, somebody could be programming in their basement right now something that'll similarly take off and be a big buzz, and we don't even know it exists yet, but he or she is writing that code. But looking forward to Linux and AI, I already talked about having AI triage bug reports, but that helps developers focus more time on code and creativity. If developers are just tired, they're not creative, right? They don't have that energy. Oh my God, I got to fix another, or triage another bug report. But the more that we free people up to do their job and have fun doing it, take away the mundane tasks and say, let's be creative. How can we creatively solve this problem? If AI takes some of the mundane things out of his or her, task list, then that person could be all that much more creative. And that creativity goes back into the company, helps them, compete more. They come up with better ideas and better products. Expect build systems to become more intelligent, allowing developers to do more in less time. That's probably obvious, but when it comes to building a distribution, which I've done, it takes a long time. There's just a lot to do. It's not just generating the ISO file and putting it on a website. There's a lot more to it than that. We could see things that are, that complicated be a lot easier, and I think that's also going to result in a lot more distributions. As if we needed more, there's like 300 on DistroWatch. It just shows the top 100. Believe me, there's more further down they're not showing you. But at the same time, again, creativity. People can focus on the new features and giving their users some kind of a service, but they could do more in less time. And I think that's a good thing. As long as we're not overusing it and over-relying on it, that's fine. AI will help us find security flaws faster, but again, threat actors will use AI for the same reason. So it's kind of a bit of a tug-of-war match between the good guys and the bad guys in that respect. And if AI is implemented within Linux with care, meaning someone is creating if someone built a distribution with AI and it was a good one, I mean like a really good one, that's great. But if we start getting garbage distributions that have like, not that much to it and barely work and they just flood the market, then Linux and AI both will suffer for that. And that goes back to the success of AI depends on us, how we implement it, how thoughtful are we, the developers implementing it with care. We ultimately shape the future. And that's basically something to keep in mind. I mean, it's really up to us. And that's it. Any questions? Thank you. Appreciate it. Yes, sir.
Now, it's in the future, of course, but it's getting closer. What is your opinion when quantum computing takes effect with AI? Like you said, the information's out there.
Right. Well, with a lot more processing power, it could do a lot more. Yes? Yes? Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah. So you're asking, quantum computing and how that would basically impact the future of AI or the future of Linux or both?
Both. Because I'm assuming they should be running it on a Linux system. But quantum computing, you can find those API keys
Right.
so much faster.
Right. Right. And I think one of the biggest problems with that is cryptography, because right now, if someone has a cryptographic key that's really good, it's going to take someone years to break into this key. Quantum computing pushes that down to 10 minutes, and all of a sudden we have a security nightmare where now we have, and that's a cascading problem because now distribution maintainers have to re-sign packages, downloads have to be re-signed. That's a cascading problem, and I feel like that's something we have to stay on top of. But at the same time, when is it going to become common? When is it going to take over? We don't really know, but we do have to kind of watch it and be prepared with the right keys and the right changes ahead of time.
But also, a lot of companies don't have AI due diligence or board members making the policies.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the information's already out there, like blueprints, like you said, probably some of these medical records. You could just, the problem right now, as I say, is that there's so much information that keeps getting big.
Right.
Under current circumstances, you won't find stuff.
Right. I totally agree with that. There's always probably something out there that we don't know of. I mean, it was just a couple of years ago I saw a yearbook photo of myself that I didn't even know was ever taken. Things like that happen all the time. But I mean, that's multifaceted because you have the legal team that needs to be involved if that information is found. Because, obviously if you call, ChatGPT, Claude, or Anthropic, or any of the companies, they might delete it, but you don't know, right? And even if they throw the hard disks in the dumpster after they say they deleted it and someone scrubs a disk and looks at the sectors for things, I mean, that's such a rabbit hole. But I think the important thing is to have policies, but also to understand what the employees are putting in. I'm not really a fan of spying or anything like that, but I do kind of feel like you do have to know what your employees are putting in there. And I'm pretty sure I've read that some of the AI agents do have a way to centralize that information for administrators to keep track of it. But part of that too is policy, because you obviously have to have a policy what can be entered and what isn't to be entered. But the problem is, just because you tell someone not to do something doesn't mean that they're going to listen to you. It doesn't mean that they're going to put it in. So I think this is a big conversation to have within the company, and there does need to be some oversight into what's being entered into AI, because that does kind of scare me a little bit. Yes, sir.
Great presentation. I really enjoyed it. Oh.
Okay.
Great presentation. I really enjoyed it. Can y'all hear me? My question is about embodying AI, because I'm big into robots. I know that's the next step for where we're moving to.
Yeah, talking about Cylons? I'm kidding, sorry. Another sci-fi reference I couldn't resist.
About that was Star Galactica, but I did catch that reference.
Yeah.
But what I will say is that about, I know we're seeing small steps in it. Based on where we are right now, where do you see it taking off? People say next 5 years, of course, that's what they say about quantum computing.
Well, I mean, okay, so he's asking basically about like, like robots, basically, which have existed for a long time, but now with AI being a brain could be entered in, and obviously that gives them more. Well, first of all, when it comes to AI taking over or doing things that way, I remember the show Murder, She Wrote when I was a kid. They were talking about virtual reality. I'm still waiting for that to, obviously virtual reality is here with the Oculus and everything, but it's not like everyone's walking around with a virtual reality headset like we kind of thought people would by now. I don't really see that happening very soon, because I think AI is kind of scary to a lot of people. I mean, you have Hollywood actors that absolutely despise it because their jobs are going to get taken out, or even worse for them, their likeness could be used in a movie that they didn't even star in. So I think there is that kind of social barricade that's kind of like, we're not really, we're okay to have it on our computer, but if it starts walking around, I don't know about that. But I think at first the mindset has to shift to be okay with that first, and then once that happens, there has to be controls. I don't necessarily think that it's going to be Terminator 2 or something like that, but we do have to have a kill switch, to be honest. We do have to have something that can shut them down, but I really don't think that's going to be anytime soon, 10, 15, 20 years, who knows. But yeah, but then again, I mean, we could have AI drones that are a bigger problem than AI robots, see what I'm saying? You never really can fully predict it. It's almost like chaos theory that kind of factors into everything. Yeah. Oh yeah, at first I thought that was a basketball. That's so cool, that's so cool.
Are there any specialized AI agents for various Linux distributions?
Yeah, Rocky Linux has one. I don't know if they call it AI Linux, but there's a number of these. I started reading about it last night, and in fact, I didn't even know they existed till last night. Apparently, there's an AI version of Arch. I also didn't know that, and Rocky as well. So it is something that's kind of happening now. But if we think about Linux in general, I mean, immutability in Linux is also and unrelated, but it's going to be something that's going to take off more and more and more. And these things take a really long time. So we're already starting to see the beginnings of that, but considering how long it took Wayland to become the default in Fedora, I'm not really sure that it's going to be anytime soon. But there are already steps in that direction that are happening now. And I want to look more into Rocky AI very soon, but as of right now, I didn't even know they existed until last night, to be completely transparent, but it's at least starting. Yep. Okay, 2 more.
This is a related question to the previous one. You were mentioning AI is just being added in everything without really adding value. So let's say that AI is going to be embedded into the core of Linux. What do you think is going to be a really good functionality that AI can run autonomously in a Linux environment that can be really useful?
So let me just make sure I understand the question. So are you asking whether I think that AI will be embedded in the kernel, or if it was to be embedded, what kind of benefits would we get from it? The second one. Well, first of all, we'd have a much higher memory footprint, which would be the more immediate thing. And already that's under scrutiny, especially if you look on Reddit and type no memory usage, even though it's not actually a problem. Some of the benefits that I could see is maybe something like if it was stripped down, like the out-of-memory killer, for example, in a Linux kernel. For those of you that don't know, if your Linux system runs out of memory, it'll kill a process to try to save itself. But by the time it does this, the system's already too far gone to recover and still doesn't function properly. And then they have a new systemd out-of-memory killer, if I remember correctly, that does a better job. But I would say that AI in the kernel could probably do a better job of, detecting resource trends that are negative before they become trends, or before they become a real problem. But then considering that AI hallucinates, I don't want to end up with a hallucinating Linux kernel that's killing processes that aren't actually a problem or anything like that. But I haven't heard of any talk about that yet, but I wouldn't be surprised. As long as it's stripped down, I think there could be some value in that. But at the same time, I feel like the Linux kernel is probably best without it because the AI tool is on a separate layer, especially the Unix philosophy of do one thing and do it well. Now the kernel is doing 10 more things than it used to do before. I think the Linux kernel is best by facilitating other layers of software rather than being the other layers of software itself, if that makes sense. But if they did do it, I would see some value, but again, it'd have to be stripped down, otherwise it's going to eat memory for lunch. Okay.
Should I talk okay here?
Yeah, I got the basketball.
Yeah, I've got a question. So I work in sales, and I use AI on a daily basis for generating some summaries, longer emails, etc. Right? And recently, I had an interesting discussion with one of my customers, and he said that all of the vendors I work with, I started seeing the longer emails, and all of them are like AI generated. I clearly see that. And he told me, guess what? I'm like copying that email, pasting that chat GPT and getting summary of that because I don't have time to read that long email.
Oh yeah, so you're fighting AI generated emails with AI, right?
Exactly, so for me it was like, I realized that time, okay, is it AI talking to AI in that case, right? Because at some point we have AI generated text sent to someone is using AI to summarize it and get the information from that. So my question to you is, isn't it going too far?
Yes.
Where are the people in that process? So what are your thoughts on that?
I have so many thoughts on that, especially being a writer, that triggers me for that. But also, it is becoming a problem. I haven't personally noticed it with email yet. I think it's fair game to take an email that you have written yourself, paste it into AI, again, as long as it doesn't have secrets in there, and look for spelling errors, maybe double negatives in your grammar or something like that is all fair game, and it can point out those things. But I think having AI write an entire email, I don't really like it because the human factor is lost. And when it comes to communication, we're already too isolated anyway, especially after COVID. And now we want to isolate ourselves by not even writing our own emails anymore. But it is a big problem because, and I'm sure people have seen this. You used to Google how to, like something simple, like how to fix a microwave. And it just has like, oh, these 10 things are the common things that fail at the microwave. What happens now when you look up that same information? 10 ways to fix your microwave, starting with the history of microwaves. It was invented in this day, why microwaves are important, what types of food can you make in a microwave, what models are available. And about 10 pages down, you find your actual answer that you were there looking for in the first place. And it's even bled into my video game hobby when I'm up against a boss in a game that I can't beat or whatever. It's like, okay, let me just Google this or something. I give up, and then I get like a 10-page article talking about, oh, this game came out this year, and the title is How to Beat So and So, in the game. But then the article is 10 pages long, and it talks about the overall history, then the character designer, then the art style, and then in some of these articles you can even tell. So it gets really annoying to me because it just wastes our time. Like you were saying, you have to spend a lot longer to read that email, but you did a smart thing by putting it back into AI to have that summarized for you. But at the same time, I don't like it. I really don't like that at all. It's just making it too hard to get the information that we need, which I think is the opposite of one of the reasons why AI was invented in the first place. If it's making us take longer, then that's defeating the whole point, in my opinion. So I just hope people will stop doing it. But I blame commercials for that, because even though I haven't seen that myself, like I haven't received any emails myself that were written that way. We've all seen commercials where someone's on a browser and they click a button and it writes an email, and then the person's just sitting there like this because they don't have to spend all the time, and they're just have a yo-yo in their hand, and their emails are being written for them. So I blame commercials for that. So yeah, it's a good one. All right. Well, I think that's about it. Thank you guys so much for coming out. I had a great time. Thank you. I appreciate you all. Thank you so much.
Great job, Jay, as always. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, I've got just a couple of, let's see. Is this thing on?
I don't hear you.
Okay, hear me?
Oh, now we do.
We good? Okay. Let me just run over a few things. Remember, those of you that have your purple Post-it notes, your yellow, my God, man. Be sure to bring them up and redeem them for a book. And Jay's got his pen up here, and he's going to sign books for you. If you have any questions or want to engage in Q&A, sort of offline Q&A with Jay, feel free to do that. I know he's going to be around for a little while. Let's see. Make sure the CFP for All Things AI next March is open right now. So make sure if you're interested in submitting a talk, you do that over the next 30 days. Make sure that you save the date for All Things AI coming up March 23rd and 24th of 2026. I know that's 5 to 6 months away. I get that. We still got the holidays to go through and everything like that, but it'll be here before you know it. So make sure that you get that on your calendar. Our next meetup will be Tuesday evening, November the 18th at Cisco. How many people here have been on Cisco's campus? A good number, but even more have not. So that will be a very good meetup. The Open SSL team will be here in person. They're actually traveling in just for that meetup. And the topic is going to be quantum computing, cryptography, security in general, et cetera. So it'll include a panel discussion with RTP security leaders, and then it'll also have the executive director of Open SSL delivering a 20 to 30 minute talk to get us started. So with all that said, Jason, you want to say a few words about we love open source? He was outside before, so there you go. That's the way
Thanks, Todd. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for being here tonight. I'll just mention really quick, we are going to start publishing all Things Open presentations that we have from a couple of weeks ago starting next week. So we're going to publish 2 to 3 presentations a day until we run out, and we hope you can enjoy those and make sure you like them on YouTube.
Cool. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Thanks, Jason. Okay, let's see. Is Chris still here? I talked to Chris before. He had I don't know, maybe he's gone. He's actually hosting an AI event here in the Triangle. Is he here? I don't see him. I was going to give him a chance. I was actually going to give him the mic to promote his event. I don't see him. Okay, that's too bad. Anyway, we're going to, in our show notes, we always send out a summary from this meetup. We're going to try to get the recording up and out somewhat soon. We'll have Jay's slides. And then we'll also have some what we commonly refer to as show notes regarding this. We'll include a link to that event as well. It's coming up in about a week, just over a week. And again, he told me about it before and asked if we would help him get the word out about it. What we typically try to do at our meetups is we'll yield the mic if you have an upcoming event. Do we have any other meetup hosts here that have an upcoming meetup? Oh, okay, all right. Yep. Where is Todd? Yeah. Tell you what I'm going to do. I know this is bad for the camera. We're still live streaming, but I want to get the microphone because we want you all to be aware of upcoming events as well. So I'm going to walk back.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so December 10th at Raleigh Founded at 5:30, we have AI Tinkerers. So this will be our second meetup. You can Google AI Tinkerers Raleigh, and you'll find a link to RSVP. So once again, December 10th at 5:30 at Raleigh Founded on the NC State campus.
Very nice. Okay. Make sure you forward me that information, and we will forward it out as part of the post-event show notes. So anyone else? Justin, you have anything going on at Fidelity Investments? No? Don't mean to put you on the spot, but we always want to give you the chance, give you an opportunity. Okay. Anyone else have anything else before we call it a night? TriJug, third Monday of every month. All right. So the Triangle Java user group meets the third Monday of every month. So please keep that in mind. Okay. All right. Very good. And then you can find that meetup on meetup.com as well. I would encourage you to join this meetup as well. It's a great way to stay updated. And I'll say this too. I don't know if I've ever said this. Those of you that are members of this meetup, you're already aware of this. Many times we distribute free passes to our events through the meetup group. So this meetup group is a good one to be a member of because we have sponsors and partners that come forward and say, hey, we want to make free passes to All Things Open or to the AI event available to your group. You can distribute them how you like, however you choose. And we often choose to do that through this meetup group. But you only will be notified if you're members of this meetup. So I would encourage you to join this meetup as well. Okay, anything else before we break up? Jay, thank you again for being here. Todd, thank you for being such a great host. Truly appreciate that. Thanks, buddy. All right, so until November the 18th, we hope to see you in November, and we're going to announce it early to mid-December meetup here very soon. We'll do 2 more before the end of the year. So thank you all very much. Thanks.